What the city is talking about. This is Montreal Now on News Talk Radio, CJAD 800.
4:07 on CJD 800. I'm Matt Gilmore sitting in for Aaron Rand, and that music means James Mennie is on the line. James, will Quebec Solidaire survive the loss of Gabriel Nadeau-Dubois?
That's the question. And you know, it's kind of funny because with everything that's going on, everything, the election and Trump and the economy and God knows what else, the departure of Gabriel Nadeau-Dubois, the announcement that he's leaving politics at the end of his term, you know, it kind of just got picked up with the flow and okay, fine, and here's what he did, and here's his political history, blah, 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 blah. But the real issue here, I find, is that his departure is kind of like the new low point for what has been a series of problems for Quebec Solidaire, which really makes one question whether it does have a future in Quebec politics, which is interesting because Quebec Solidaire at this point is the last refuge, as far as I can tell, of the true social democratic ideal that was a part of Quebec politics and indeed was an essence of le modèle québécois. And the fact that, you know, Nadeau's kind of shrugging, saying, you know, I'm done, I've had it. And we've had a lot of complaints about, Nadeau-Dubois' leadership style, all of them coming from female MNAs who say, this guy's the boss, he's very stubborn, whatever. And now the latest complaint from Nadia Poirier, who was the candidate for Quebec Solidaire in Terrebonne, essentially saying, I got hung out to dry. I got thrown under the bus. I got zero support from the party. The idea was, you know, we're going to keep our powder dry. We don't have any money or resources to throw in on a by-election that we know we're not going to win. But here's the problem. And the problem, I guess, an explanation, because Terrebonne, yes, it was perceived as a PQ stronghold. They voted PQ again, but they've also voted for Action Démocratique Québec, which is not the same as the PQ. They voted certainly for the CAQ twice in the person of Pierre Fitzgibbon, which has nothing to do with the PQ. So, you know, the idea that, you know, we're not going to go there because you don't have a chance. This is exactly the kind of riding where you have to fight. This is exactly the kind of riding that you have to win if, and this is the money part of the question, if you intend to form a government. But more and more, whether it's how many, you know, having parity with gender parity with the number of candidates in the next election. Indeed, at one point there's a controversy over the apparent imposing of female candidates in ridings just to keep the parity up. All this is going on. It suggests that perhaps Quebec Solidaire is afflicted with what I like to refer to as NDP syndrome, which is basically, I can do and say the most outrageous things. I can criticize anything I want, knowing full well that I will not, nor will I ever form a government, which I guess has worked in the past. But now, when you look at what's at stake almost on a daily basis in terms of the responsibilities we're handing our politicians, I'm not entirely sure that the brand of politics, which is still being worked on by Quebec Solidaire, will survive the departure of Gabriel Nadeau-Dubois. I'm not entirely sure. I'm not saying that they'll disappear. I'm not saying there won't be a Quebec Solidaire. I'm not entirely sure at this point that they're going to hang on to any of the seats that they have, and indeed whether there's going to be anybody else who's going to step up to fill that ideological gap that seems to be appearing on, you know, the panoply of Quebec political thought, which is left of center, unapologetically left of center, believing, as the PQ once did, that, you know, the social democratic ideals are not to be toyed with. That went out the window, of course, at the PQ when they decided and gleefully decided to elect noted billionaire and legendary union buster Pierre Carpello as their leader. So yeah, I think Quebec Solidaire was the last stand, and Gabriel Nadeau-Dubois was the commander of that last garrison. And I think when he goes, even if it's still around in name, certainly in spirit and probably in political presence, Quebec Solidaire will be a thing of the past after 2026.
So what are we to make of the career of Gabriel Nadeau-Dubois? You know, he rose to prominence during the student strikes in 2011, worked with the unions, made a big splash as he came on to the political stage, and now at 34, he's throwing his hands up and saying, I'm I'm done. I'm all worn out. So what happened to that career, that promising career?
Well, listen, the career, first of all, was all self-made. But what you're saying with Gabriel Nadeau-Dubois, if we are talking about him, it was because he enjoyed the kind of boost that Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon is getting right now in terms of lots of media exposure. During the 2012 Maple Spring, and I covered that guy every day, he was literally on your TV screen every day. He became a part of the fabric of Quebec's news day. And, when your name gets turned into an acronym, GND, you knew perfectly well the guy was headed for something. He didn't embrace the idea of being a politician from the get-go, but eventually he did. He spurned the PQ. He decided to, perhaps realizing the PQ was anything but left of center, he wanted to stay true to those ideals. But I think in the end, he himself discovered he had to make a choice, which was become more pragmatic, which is a word I'm sure we'll be hearing a great deal of over the next few weeks during this election, the federal election campaign. More pragmatic, work to win, work to form a government, as opposed to working to basically recycle social democratic slogans and pretend that's your job. I think that's what he saw. You didn't see much of an opening there. I don't think we've heard the last of Gabriel Nadeau-Dubois. I don't think perhaps even the door to politics is completely closed. But I think right now, the father of two young kids who's seen what life is like on the other side during his paternity leave, I think he's making the right decision. He took a deep breath, said, for the time being, it's not worth it. I've done all I can with Quebec Solidaire, and I think he has. We'll see what's going to happen next. But as I say, don't expect great things from QS. And we'll see. I don't know. Will it be academia? Will it be the media? As I say, we haven't heard the last of them. But I think what we have heard the last of is any viable, genuine attempt to actually create a viable political and realistic political party that is indeed left of center on the political spectrum in Quebec. All
right, Jim, you did mention the federal election very quickly before we wrap up. You think this is going to be a particularly nasty campaign?
Absolutely. Everybody, this is the last gasp for everybody. The Liberals realize that they have been given this, how can I put it? It's basically a huge syringe of adrenaline right to their political heart with the arrival of Mark Carney. They were trailing by more than 20 points. Now, in some cases, they're ahead of the Tories, and they want to keep that momentum going, which is why I think on Sunday we're going to see an April 28th voting date. They want to get this done. They want to keep the momentum going. And that is also realized by Pierre Poilievre. He has all of a sudden been thrown back. His entire strategy has been blown out the airlock. He's got to try and turn around and say, I'm not, even though the whole campaign for the Liberals against him is, this is Trump's mini-me. He's got to turn around and distance himself from Trump. Can he do that in the amount of time the Liberals are going to give him? I'm not entirely sure. But we also know, and I've mentioned this on air before, if for the fourth time, the Conservative Party of Canada, i.e. the Reform Canadian Alliance Coalition, breaks up against the suddenly restored Liberal wall, there's going to have to be some real soul-searching and questions asked about how much longer conservatism in this country can afford to be inextricably linked to the fortunes of Stephen Harper.
I do like that image of the Liberal Party as Uma Thurman in Pulp Fiction getting the syringe to the
absolutely.
adrenaline
They're back.
Hit.
They're totally back.
Just very quickly, though, I just want to ask you what you make of sort of the rhetoric from Donald Trump the last couple of days. First on Fox News with Lauren Ingram saying, he would maybe even prefer a liberal. And then again today, he doesn't really care who wins, but the liberals are maybe easier to deal with. What do you make of that sort of interjection?
His entourage pulled him aside, said, listen, looks like the liberals are going to win. So what you have to do, we don't want them to win, sir. We want the blue guys, the conservatives, to win because they're a lot friendlier to our agenda. So what you have to do, go on TV and say is you support the liberal. That way, because everyone hates you up north, that they'll vote for the conservative. That was as Machiavellian as that got, and I think it received just 24 hours of attention. But I don't think that's really going to help. I don't think that's going to stick to Mark Carney over the course of this campaign, that all of a sudden, Donald Trump says he's the guy he'd rather deal with.
Thank you, Jim. Have a great weekend.
You too.